Hello guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'll be talking about the shutdown point. The shutdown point is still part of perfect competition. If you recall from my previous video, I spoke about the three situations under perfect competition, where we had an economic profit, where price is greater than average cost. Then we had a normal profit, where price is equal to the average cost. And the last one, which is an economic loss, where price is less than the average cost. Case number 4 is where price is less than the average variable cost. So up until now, we've just focused on average cost. And what we assume in these three situations is that a firm is able to cover its average cost. Or if it's not able to cover its average cost in the case of an economic loss, we still assume that he'll be able to cover his variable cost and not its fixed cost. But in a shutdown point, the firm finds it difficult to cover its variable cost. A variable cost is something that varies. So for example, in our pizza restaurant, our variable cost is something like water and electricity, pizza dough, pizza ingredients, and the most important one is wages and salaries. Here, what happens is that if a firm cannot cover its average variable cost, which are these costs listed on the right-hand side, then we assume that the business or the firm cannot carry on for longer in the future. So whenever we listen to the news, we hear things like retrenchment of staff and firms unable to pay wages, and especially in a time like this where we're facing a global crisis, is that firms are not making enough money or they're not selling product that can cover the salaries and wages of their staff. So therefore, it becomes a decision whether to shut down or not. And most of the time, when we reach this point, we have to make a decision to most likely shut down. But obviously, as economists, we have to analyze this point before making any decision. So for now, I'm going to show you where the shutdown point is. And if you ever face with a situation like this in a firm or your own firm one day, then you understand that if you cannot cover your variable cost, then you might need to consider shutting down. Okay, so let's get straight into the graph. Here we've got our marginal cost curve, looking like a knife tick, as well as our marginal revenue curve, which is a constant elastic demand curve. And here I'm going to place the average cost curve. Now, the average cost curve will automatically be above the marginal revenue curve in this case because we're already making an economic loss. Now we're going to add in the average variable cost, which is a very similar shape to the average cost curve. And here we can see that at the point where MR is equal to MC, we know that we have to set our price at that point as a perfect competitor. And also it's our maximizing quantity at, for example, 10 units. So the average cost at this particular point is above the marginal revenue curve, meaning that even though we're selling a product at this particular price, we're not covering our average variable cost. And once we don't cover our average variable cost, we know that we're reaching a point of shutdown. So the main thing to understand here in simple terms is that when price is less than the average variable cost, we have a point of shutdown. And that's basically all that you need to understand when we have a shutdown point. Anything where the price decreases even further will push us into a greater deficit with our average variable cost, meaning that the decision to shut down becomes easier because we can see that there's not enough demand for our product, meaning that we're not receiving enough revenue for that product that we're selling, and therefore we can't even cover the cost of our salaries and our wages, causing us to reach a point of shutdown. So if we have to recap all the cases, case number 1 up until case number 4, we see that we have an economic profit case, then we've got a normal profit case, and we have an economic loss. Here we can see that price is related to the average cost, but in the shutdown point, which is case number 4, we can see that price is less than the average variable cost. And that's all you need to understand for the shutdown point in this case, or this example, and all these 4 cases to understand different situations in perfect competition.